Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today we have entered day 154 of the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And today we're starting right off with the tactical map centered on the area of Slovansk, Kramatorsk, Bakhmut, and Seversk. And Russian forces continue to pound away at Ukrainian forces all across the entire front line of the line of contact. Specifically, we are now seeing the envelopment of Ukrainian forces that is located near the power plant in this area just to the southeast of Bakhmut. There had been some reports that indicated that Russian forces had fully seized control of that power plant, again located just north of this little pond lake right at this locale. And we're also hearing that there are actually there, or at least there could be, Ukrainian forces still present at that power plant. The Russian forces appear to be hesitant to use vast amounts of heavy artillery against this power plant, again out of fear of some sort of ecological disaster. But what is happening? The Russians are pushing further to the northwest and to the south as well, and appear to be at this point attempting to envelop and attack the 30th Mechanized Brigade and the 72nd Mechanized Brigade, with a host of other territorial units that are augmenting these forces, and they are attempting to destroy these two fairly sizable Ukrainian formations en masse in this locale. And I think what you're probably going to end up seeing as the Russians push further in a direction of north-northwest, that they will then pivot and look to roll up the defensive lines that are maintained near the town of Toretsk in this locale right here, which is currently being covered and defended by the 46th Air Mobile Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. And once the Russians have taken those objectives, we anticipate that we will see a move both from the south, from the east, and possibly more limited from the north, attacking Bakhmut. And obviously, once Bakhmut falls, the M3 highway will be open for an attack on Sloviansk from the south. At the same time, we are continuing to see Russian forces pound Ukrainian forces in the north-northwest as well, in the direction of Sloviansk, coming out of Izum. And there are two, upwards to four Ukrainian brigades providing a defensive capacity to the north of Sloviansk. You have the 81st Airborne Brigade, the 80th Air Mobile Brigade, the 79th Air Mobile Brigade, and the 95th Air Mobile Brigade. So some of the most elite units in the Ukrainian military obviously are covering the southern approaches from Sloviansk. And in the south, again, they have established fairly significant defensive lines against Russian forces. But the problem is all these units are under almost constant, non-stop attack by this very, very heavy Russian artillery, tactical air assets, and multiple launch rocket systems as well. It's very, very difficult to ascertain just how long Ukrainian forces are going to be able to hold up against such withering fire, and it really seems to be right now a war of attrition through casualties that the Russians are trying to inflict upon Ukrainian forces. At a certain point, given the tempo of operations, the Ukrainians are just going to, at some point, run out of trained personnel. and it's going to be very, very difficult for them to continue to hold these lines. And on top of that, the continued Russian strikes on Ukrainian supply depots and degrading the ability of the Ukrainian military to supply itself in the field. So you have two really key factors going against Ukraine at this point. One is the heavy loss of trained and highly capable personnel that we saw in the early parts of the war do a very, very good job against Russian forces. And then two, the degrading of the Ukrainian army to equip itself with supplies, ammunition, weapons, what have you. Obviously, there are some Western systems coming into the country, and those systems are proving to be a thorn in the side of Russian forces. But ultimately, the vast majority of Ukrainian weapon systems are either of a former Soviet design, Soviet production, or weapons that were produced in Ukraine by themselves. And a lot of those systems and those factories and depots have been or are being destroyed. So the real end game for Ukrainian forces, unfortunately for Ukrainian forces, is that one, in the very near future, you could have a very inexperienced armed force in terms of personnel, because a lot of the previous personnel had been killed or wounded. And then two, the issue with supply. They just won't have any weapons to fight with. So then what happens? Do we see a collapse of the Ukrainian military, or do we see some of these forces, these newer recruits start to improvise, adapt, and become better warfighters? Again, very, very difficult to say at this point. The Ukrainian military now sets at about 1 million personnel, so a very, very large force. Obviously, a lot of those personnel have not been adequately trained. A lot of these personnel are also heading to the United Kingdom and other Western countries to continue their training. We're going to go back over and we're going to look at the tactical map. Here we'll go over to Bakhmut real quick, and you can see a better view of what is actually happening. So here you have the power plant. There's some reports that say that the Russians are in complete control of this locale. Other reports say that there are still Ukrainian forces dug in, especially lighter forces, that continue to prevent the Russians from taking full control over it. And here you can see what is happening in terms of this envelopment and this attack from the north and south against the 30th Mechanized Brigade. And then obviously supporting the 30th Mechanized Brigade, you have the 72nd Mechanized Brigade as well. And just to the north and near the M3, you have the 58th Motorized Rifle Brigade, and then the Reserve Fire Brigade, which is the 4th Tank Brigade, the 80th Air Mobile Brigade, and then you have a host of reconnaissance units and drone units as well operating near the front line as well. So let's go back over here to the main strategic map. I just want to make sure you guys are seeing the same thing I am, and you are, so that is a positive. We continue to see the fighting taking place also in the area on the western bank of the Dnieper River, specifically near Kherson and to the northeast of Kherson. We're not hearing as much information about the envelopment of Russian forces, those 3 battalion tactical groups that were in this locale. That seems to have resolved itself. Russian forces are still in control of the town, and this reported counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces has not resulted in very much land acquisition. We do hear about the HIMARS strikes behind Russian lines, and as I had said before, those are proving to be an incredible thorn in the backside of Russian forces. And then one final issue I wanted to talk about real quick. The first Iranian drones may have been delivered to Russian forces. I know I had mentioned the possible Russian acquisition of Iranian drones, and so there were some reports that were discounting that, saying that was not going to happen. Both sides, Russia, Iran, was saying that was probably not going to occur. However, it does appear that it is quite possible that Russia is taking delivery of Iranian drones. So what does that mean? What does that say? Well, it's a definite indicator that the Russians have neglected their drone program, meaning they have probably not uh, provided enough resources to to make advances in their own drone program. That's both R&D, research and development, and then obviously the manufacturing process of these drones. So obviously we are seeing Russian drones in this conflict. Most of these drones are smaller drones designed to sense targets for the massive amounts of Russian artillery. But we don't really see is what we would call strike drones. These are loitering drones that are able to fly over a target, identify a target, and then launch a precision guided missile or some sort of glide bomb, miniature glide bomb, towards that target on the ground. The likes of which we see from the Turkish Bayraktar TB2 drone or the American Predator or Reaper drone system. It appears right now that, from what I have seen at least, the few true dedicated loitering strike drones that the Russians have used have been somewhat dated. It appears that you can see from the sensor package that is on the drone that they don't appear to be using any sort of thermal camera. The gyroscopic stability of the optronics seem to be unstable, and just it does not appear to be a very high quality drone from I guess a research development deployment and then manufacturing process. That drone specifically, and the nomenclature escapes me at this point. I'll have to do some research, but a very few of those were actually deployed by the Russians, and really those compare nothing to the likes of the Turkish drone that has been deployed, the TB2, or is much behind the American Reaper drone, which is just a whole other category unto itself in terms of its capabilities and just the high quality of that system that's deployed. But it's amazing to see that the Iranians have come as far as they have. As you know, they were involved in that strike on Saudi targets in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia several years back. That was back during the Trump administration. And those drones and cruise missiles were able to effectively hit targets in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And we know Saudi Arabia has a fairly good air defense system. The ability of those crews to deploy those systems, I think, at times would have to be put into question. That's why we eventually saw American Patriot batteries deployed to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to prevent further attacks by those Iranian systems. At the same time, now we're seeing these Iranian drones now quite possibly being used by the Russians at some point. But it'll be interesting to see how the Russians deploy those drones, what sort of countermeasures the Ukrainians and obviously its Western-backed allies are able to deploy against those drones. Those Iranian drones that the Russians may utilize. But I would have to say at this point the Russians really need to look at investing in two areas that have probably become of great concern for Russian forces. One, that is their drone capability. In the modern era, you are going to need drones, whether it's ground-operated drones, but more specifically, you are going to need drones that have the ability to operate very, very long periods of time over the front lines, and then deploy offensive weapon systems as well. And obviously, most important are the optronics on those drones, the abilities to sense, identify, and then shoot at targets on the ground. And then you need a precision guided weapon system as well to serve on that drone to hit targets. And then the other area I think right now is a big concern for Russian forces is its ground strike capability. The Russians have neglected some of the sensor packages that Western nations use that probably would have helped Russia greatly in this ongoing conflict. And specifically what I'm talking about is a true multi-role fighter bomber that has the ability to deploy targeting sensors or targeting pods. And we just don't see the Russians deploying those. We continue to see the Russians flying very low, dropping dumb bombs. They are dropping TV-guided weapon systems as well, and they are dropping some precision-guided ordnance as well, but not in the amount that would be effective in this ongoing conflict. The Russians really need the ability to have a standoff ability, much like these Western aircraft do, like we've seen with aircraft with the United States. F-15s, F-16s, F-35s, all these aircraft use either the Lightning or the Sniper AT targeting pod, which gives those aircraft incredible standoff distance, and it also provides great real-time reconnaissance information as well. And unfortunately for the Russians, we just don't see those systems being deployed, so it's something that the Russians are going to need to jump on right away. The Chinese have those systems, and I guess maybe the Chinese will assist the Russians with handing over some of those systems that I believe would help the Russians greatly. And I think if the Russians could have a do-over, they probably would, especially the disaster that occurred northwest and north of Kiev. That's why an initial air campaign is so important in modern war, and we just did not see that from Russian forces at the start of the conflict, and it probably would have helped Russia greatly to launch said air campaign prior to engaging the Ukrainians. I had mentioned this at the start of the conflict, that I believe that the Russians would probably do that, but it never occurred. We saw this very aggressive operation by Russian forces, which did not pan out well for Russian forces. Now, obviously, they are adapting to their situation. They are adapting to the equipment that they do have, and appear to be, right now at least, fighting a fairly effective war on the Eastern Front against Ukrainian forces. But that is really it for today. We will continue to monitor, report, and bring you more content for your consumption. Thank you for joining us, and have a good day.